Hello friends. I can see 80% of my viewers don't subscribe while watching videos. Please hit the subscribe button and like this video. Press that bell icon for notifications. And tell me in the comments from which city you are watching this video. My name is Aria, and I watched my ex-fiancé cut into the wedding cake I made for him and my former best friend, and waited for them to discover the message I had hidden inside. But let me start from the beginning, because this story will show you exactly what happens when someone underestimates the power of a woman scorned, especially when that woman happens to be one of the most talented pastry chefs in the entire city. The morning I discovered Daniel was cheating on me with Lila, the world did not just shift beneath my feet. It completely shattered. I remember standing in our shared apartment, the apartment where we had planned our entire future together, holding his phone in my trembling hands, reading message after message between him and the woman I had called my best friend for over 8 years. The messages were not just casual flirtations. They were detailed, intimate, disgusting. They talked about me. They laughed about me. They planned their secret meetings while I was working late at the bakery, building the business that was supposed to fund our dream wedding. My knees gave out. I sank onto our kitchen floor, the same floor where Daniel had proposed to me just 6 months earlier, and I sobbed until my chest ached and my throat felt raw. But the tears, they were nothing compared to the rage that started building inside me, because as I scrolled through more messages, I realized this betrayal had been going on for months. Months of lies. Months of deception. Months of them playing me for a complete fool. Daniel came home that evening, acting like nothing had happened. He kissed my cheek, asked about my day at the bakery, even complimented the dinner I had prepared. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw his phone at his lying face. But instead, I stayed silent. I served him dinner. I smiled when he talked about our upcoming wedding venue visit. And I began planning something much more satisfying than a confrontation. The next morning, I confronted them both. Not separately. Together. I invited Lila over for coffee, told her Daniel would be joining us. The look on their faces when I placed Daniel's phone on the table, with their message thread open for all to see, that look will stay burned in my memory forever. Daniel tried to explain. Of course he did. Men like Daniel always have explanations. He claimed it meant nothing. Said Lila seduced him. That he was confused about his feelings. That he loved me and wanted to work things out. Lila, she just cried. Big, dramatic tears that I had seen her use to manipulate people countless times before. She begged for forgiveness. Said it was a mistake. Claimed she felt terrible about hurting me. But you know what gave away their lies? The fact that they kept looking at each other. Even in that moment, when they were supposedly devastated about hurting me, they could not stop stealing glances at one another. That is when I knew. This was not just physical. This was not just a mistake. They were in love. And I was just the obstacle in their way. I threw Daniel out that same day, packed his belongings in garbage bags, and left them on the sidewalk outside our building. I changed the locks, blocked his number, and told him if he wanted to discuss anything, he could communicate through lawyers. The engagement ring, that beautiful 2-carat diamond he had saved for months to buy, I returned it by mailing it to his office. No note. No explanation. Just the ring in a plain envelope. Because some statements are more powerful when they speak for themselves. The weeks that followed were the darkest period of my entire life. Not just because of the heartbreak, but because of the humiliation. Our social circle was small. Everyone knew everyone. And word of Daniel's cheating spread like wildfire through a dry forest. But here is the thing about small communities. People love drama. And they especially love taking sides. Half of our friends supported me, called Daniel a cheating scumbag, said they had always suspected something was off about Lila. The other half, they whispered that maybe I had driven Daniel away, that perhaps I was too focused on my career, too busy building my bakery to pay attention to my relationship. Some even suggested that Daniel and Lila were meant to be together, and that I should just move on gracefully. Move on gracefully. As if betrayal was something I should handle with poise and dignity. as if having my heart ripped out and stomped on was just another life lesson I needed to learn from. My family tried to be supportive, but I could see the pity in their eyes. My mother kept suggesting I should consider therapy. My father wanted to have a conversation with Daniel. My sister offered to help me start dating again. Everyone had advice. Everyone had opinions. But no one really understood the depth of what I was feeling. I threw myself into work. The bakery became my sanctuary, my refuge from all the whispers and pitying looks. Kneading dough became meditation. Decorating cakes became art therapy. Creating something beautiful from basic ingredients. It reminded me that I had value beyond being someone's fiancé. My business started thriving in ways it never had before. Word of mouth spread about my incredible creations. Brides started booking me months in advance. Food bloggers began featuring my work. I was becoming known as one of the most talented pastry chefs in the region. Success, it has a funny way of healing wounds. Not completely, but enough to help you remember who you are when everything else falls apart. 3 months after the breakup, I heard through mutual friends that Daniel and Lila were officially together. Not just dating, living together. In the apartment that Daniel and I had shared, where I had left behind so many memories. It stung, but not as much as I expected. By then, I was beginning to realize that losing Daniel was not the tragedy I had initially thought. It was actually a blessing in disguise. Because living with someone who could lie to your face every single day, someone who could betray you with your best friend, that is not love. That is not partnership. That is just settling for someone who does not deserve you. 6 months after our breakup, the call came. I was in my bakery, working on a 3-tier anniversary cake with hand-piped roses, when my phone rang. The caller ID showed a number I did not recognize. But the voice on the other end, it was familiar. Margaret Chun, one of the most exclusive wedding planners in the city. She had worked on several events where my cakes were featured, and she always praised my work. "Aria, darling," she said in her crisp, professional tone, "I have a rather urgent request." She explained that one of her couples had a cake emergency. Their original baker had fallen ill, and they needed someone who could create a show-stopping 5-tier masterpiece. For a wedding happening in just 2 weeks, the budget was generous. The guest list was impressive, and they specifically requested me after seeing photos of my work. "Of course I would love to help," I said, already mentally designing the cake in my head. "Wonderful. Let me give you the couple's information." Margaret continued. "The groom is Daniel Reeves, and the bride is Lila Martinez." The phone nearly slipped from my hands. My heart started pounding so loudly, I could hear it in my ears. Daniel and Lila were getting married, and they wanted me to make their wedding cake. For a moment, I could not breathe. The audacity of it was staggering. Did they really think I would say yes? Did they believe I had forgotten their betrayal? Or maybe they did not even know Margaret had called me. Maybe Margaret was unaware of our history. Maybe this was just a cosmic coincidence. "Aria, are you still there?" Margaret's voice cut through my shock. Yes, I am here." "So you will take the job?" I should have said no. Any rational person would have declined immediately. But as I stood there in my bakery, surrounded by the success I had built from the ashes of my broken engagement, a different kind of plan started forming in my mind. Yes, I heard myself saying, "I will take the job." The next 2 weeks were a whirlwind of planning and preparation. Margaret sent me detailed specifications for the cake. 5 tiers. White fondant with gold accents. Sugar roses cascading down one side. Elegant but not overly ornate. Classic but memorable. It was exactly the type of cake I excelled at creating. But this cake would be different from any I had ever made. Because hidden between the layers, etched in dark chocolate script that would only be visible when the cake was cut, I planned to leave them a message. A message that would turn their perfect wedding day into something they would never forget. I spent days perfecting the chocolate lettering. The script had to be precise, bold enough to be clearly readable, but thin enough to be hidden between the cake layers until the first cut. I practiced the technique dozens of times, using practice cakes and leftover frosting, until I could create the message flawlessly. The message itself. I changed it several times. At first, I wanted something harsh. Something that would embarrass them completely. But then I realized, true revenge is not about causing a scene. It is about delivering truth in a way that cannot be ignored or explained away. So I settled on something simple but devastating. Forever starts with betrayal. 7 words that would summarize their entire relationship. 7 words that would remind everyone present exactly how their love story began. The night before their wedding, I worked alone in my bakery until nearly dawn. Each layer had to be perfect. The fondant smooth as silk. The gold leaf applied with precision. The sugar roses crafted to look impossibly real. And hidden between the 3rd and 4th layers. My message waited. Dark chocolate script on white frosting. Invisible until the knife would reveal it. As I put the finishing touches on the cake, I felt something I had not experienced in months. Peace. Not happiness, exactly, but a deep sense of satisfaction. Justice served with buttercream and fondant. The wedding venue was even more beautiful than I had imagined. Rolling gardens. Twinkling lights strung between ancient oak trees. White roses everywhere. It was the kind of wedding every woman dreams of having. The kind of wedding Daniel and I had planned together. But instead of bitterness, I felt only a cold sort of satisfaction. Because I knew something no one else in attendance knew. I knew this perfect day was about to become very memorable. For all the wrong reasons. I delivered the cake personally. It was not required. But I wanted to see their faces when they first laid eyes on my creation. The cake was magnificent. Even I had to admit it. 5 tiers of absolute perfection. Guests gasped when they saw it wheeled into the reception hall. Photographers immediately began taking pictures. Daniel and Lila stood hand in hand, admiring what would soon become the centerpiece of their reception. "It is absolutely stunning," Lila whispered, her eyes wide with genuine amazement. Daniel nodded in agreement. "You have outdone yourself," he said, looking directly at me for the first time since our confrontation months earlier. I smiled politely, the same professional smile I gave all my clients. "I am so glad you love it," I replied. "I put extra care into this one." If only they knew exactly what kind of care I had taken. I stayed for the reception, not as a guest, but as the professional baker ensuring everything went smoothly. At least, that was my excuse. Really, I wanted to be there for the moment when they would cut into my masterpiece and discover what I had hidden inside. The dinner was lovely. Speeches were made. Toasts were shared. Daniel and Lila looked radiant, happy, in love, and completely unaware of what was coming. Finally, the moment arrived. Time for the cake cutting. The photographer positioned Daniel and Lila behind the stunning 5-tier creation. Guests gathered around with phones and cameras ready. Margaret, the wedding planner, handed them the silver cake knife. They posed for photos, smiling, laughing, playing up their happiness for the cameras. "Make a wish before you cut," someone called out. Daniel and Lila closed their eyes, made their silent wishes, and then positioned the knife at the bottom of the 1st tier. I held my breath. The knife slid through the fondant, through the buttercream, into the vanilla sponge cake. Daniel lifted the first slice onto a plate. And that is when everything changed. The dark chocolate script was clearly visible against the white cake. Bold letters spelling out my message. Forever starts with betrayal. At first, no one understood what they were seeing. There was a moment of confused silence. People leaning closer, squinting at the slice, reading the words, then recognition, understanding, shock. A gasp rippled through the crowd, then murmurs, then complete, heavy silence. Daniel's face went pale. The color drained from his cheeks so quickly I thought he might faint. Lila's hand flew to her mouth, her eyes wide with horror and humiliation. The photographer kept taking pictures, capturing every moment of their shock and embarrassment. Guests began pulling out their phones, taking photos and videos of the cake, of Daniel and Lila's reactions, of the chaos unfolding. The silence stretched on, thick and suffocating. No one knew what to say. How do you respond to something like this? Margaret, the wedding planner, was the first to spring into action. She quickly began directing guests toward the bar, suggesting they give the couple some privacy. But the damage was done. Everyone had seen it. Everyone knew exactly what that message meant. And in our small community, this would be the story people talked about for years. I watched from the back of the reception hall, still wearing my professional baker's apron, still smiling politely, as if I had no idea what had just happened, as if I was just as shocked as everyone else. Daniel looked around the room, his eyes searching until they found mine. When our gazes met, I saw recognition flash across his face. He knew. He knew exactly who had put that message in his wedding cake. But what could he do? Accuse me in front of all his wedding guests? Create an even bigger scene? He was trapped. And he knew it. Lila started crying. Not the delicate, pretty tears she had shed when I confronted them. Real, ugly sobs that smeared her makeup and shook her entire body. She grabbed Daniel's arm, whispered something in his ear. He nodded and began steering her toward a side exit. Their perfect wedding reception, ruined in a matter of seconds, by 7 words written in chocolate. As guests began to leave, many of them stopped to compliment me on the cake. Absolutely beautiful work, they said. The detail was incredible. So creative with that hidden message. They spoke as if the message had been intentional, as if Daniel and Lila had requested it. I accepted their compliments graciously, thanked them for their kind words, and never once admitted what I had really done. Margaret approached me as I was packing up my supplies. "Aria," she said quietly, "that message in the cake, was that what?" I asked innocently. She studied my face for a long moment, then smiled. A knowing, approving smile. "Nothing," she said finally. "Just very creative work." She handed me an envelope with my payment, plus a generous tip. "I have a feeling I will be getting many more requests for your services after tonight." She was right. The story spread through our community like wildfire. Social media exploded with photos and videos from the wedding. The cake became internet famous. Baker's Revenge became a trending hashtag. My phone started ringing constantly. Brides wanting to book me. Food bloggers requesting interviews. Television producers asking me to appear on talk shows. Everyone wanted to know the story behind the cake. But I never confirmed or denied anything. I simply smiled and said I was proud of all my work. My bakery business exploded overnight. The waiting list for my cakes became months long. I had to hire additional staff, expand to a larger location, raise my prices significantly. Success. It tastes sweeter than any revenge ever could. Daniel and Lila left town shortly after their wedding. I heard they moved to another state. Started fresh somewhere no one knew their story. Good for them. Everyone deserves a chance at happiness. Even people who build their happiness on someone else's pain. But they will always know. Every anniversary, every time they cut a cake, they will remember that their marriage began with a public reminder of their betrayal. And that is enough justice for me. People often ask me if I regret what I did, if I feel bad about ruining their wedding day. The answer is complicated. Do I regret exposing the truth about how their relationship started? No. Do I regret turning their perfect day into something memorable for all the wrong reasons? Not really. Because here is what I learned from that experience. Sometimes the most powerful revenge is not screaming or crying or making threats. Sometimes it is simply serving the truth. Elegantly, deliciously, and right on time. My name is Aria. And I am no longer the woman who got left behind. I am the woman who built an empire from the ashes of betrayal. The woman who turned heartbreak into art. The woman who learned that the sweetest revenge is living well. And occasionally, delivering justice wrapped in fondant. Today my bakery is thriving. I have a team of talented bakers working under me. We create edible masterpieces for clients across the country. And every single cake we make, every celebration we help create, is a reminder that beautiful things can emerge from the most painful experiences. Sometimes people ask me about dating, whether I have found love again. The truth is, I am in no hurry. I spent so many years defining myself through relationships, through being someone's girlfriend or fiancé. that I forgot who I was as an individual. Now I know exactly who I am. I am a successful businesswoman, an artist, a survivor, and when the right person comes along, someone who appreciates all of those things about me, someone who would never dream of betraying me, then maybe I will consider sharing my life again. But this time, I will never again lose myself in someone else's story. The cake that changed everything still sits in my portfolio. Photos of it are displayed prominently in my bakery, not because I am proud of the revenge, but because I am proud of the craftsmanship, the technique, the artistry. It was objectively one of the most beautiful cakes I have ever created. And the message? Well, the message was just the truth, delivered in the most elegant way possible. If there is a lesson in all of this, it is that betrayal will try to break you. Heartbreak will try to define you. But you get to choose what rises from the ashes. You can choose bitterness. You can choose to remain a victim forever. Or you can choose to transform your pain into power, your heartbreak into art, your betrayal into the foundation of something stronger. I chose strength. I chose success. I chose to build something beautiful from something broken. And that choice changed everything. So to anyone watching this who has been betrayed, who has had their heart broken, who has been left behind by people they trusted, remember this. You are not defined by what was done to you. You are defined by what you choose to do next. And sometimes, just sometimes, the most beautiful revenge is simply living well, with a little bit of chocolate script hidden where only you know to look for it. If you enjoyed this story of sweet revenge and incredible resilience, please subscribe to our channel for more real-life stories that will inspire, shock, and empower you. Hit that notification bell so you never miss our latest uploads, and let us know in the comments below. What would you have done in my situation? Your support means the world to us, and every subscription helps us continue sharing these powerful stories of survival and triumph.